Hello friends and welcome to yet another session of NITCO Talks. And today we have a fantastic panel of interior designers, absolutely amazing. And let me do the introduction. Zarir Aybara, with an educational backing and work exposure in finance and international business, Zarir switched over to the creative side in late 2013 and hasn't looked back since. Zarir is an associate at Netarwala and Aybara Interior Architects and is currently working on a wide array of residential interior projects in Mumbai, Bangalore, and Hyderabad. Additionally, Zarir plays an active role at the studio for business development, management, processes, and administration. Welcome, Zarir.
Thanks.
Jahan Poonawalla. For Jahan, the interior design process is easy and fun. As the principal architect of JJ Poonawalla, she has led her team as an innovative conceptualist with a sharp eye for fresh approaches and cutting-edge design modalities. Her collaborative brainstorming strategies have resulted in the use of the most current technologies and in a steady stream of satisfied clients. She has completed projects all over India and internationally in London, Florence, Lusaka, Zanzibar, and Dubai. Welcome, Jahan.
Thank you.
Shilpa Jain Balwali, graduating from Academy of Architecture, that's a famous architectural college in Mumbai, in 2001, Shilpa pursued her master's in architecture and further specialized in healthcare designs and systems at the Texas A&M University. Her keen interest in healthcare design was honed by working at some very reputed firms in Boston, Houston, and India in her 2 decades of career experience. Last year, she was felicitated at the Wade Women Architects and Designers Awards. Not just this, her firm, Studio Osmosis, has been felicitated as one of the Hot 100 practices in India 2017. She's a traveler at heart and believes that on these journeys, a creative mind breeds newer ideas and gives a different perspective to design. Welcome, Shilpa.
Thanks so much.
First question. What are some of the digital tools you use for designing? How do these tools help optimize work processes? Jahan, would you like to take that?
Sure. Thank you, Vivek. I think being tech savvy is now a part of the job. So back in the day, I still remember being, when we were straight out of college, we would have a heavy portfolio thick with our design ideas and, swatches and tools for taking measurements and plenty of paper, of course, for sketching. But now with all the right apps, we can do most of this from home. So for today's designers, apps are not only help to, gather information, design inspiration, but we can all your day-to-day minutiae of your business, aid in client communication, assist in even the actual design work, and even give you a mini marketing department. I mean, you could do all of that. So, but if you, and these apps which you have there, all of these, Pinterest for that matter, some massive library of inspiration. You can start with working with clients to get a sense of their style from that. And they can help you to do even if you're not in the design field. So they're all out there for our digital tools, which we can use for the designing. And for, even for the market, like the project management angle, I use something called Wunderlist. So we have this tool where you can create these interactive to-do lists. It's a basic project management software. We don't want to get into MS Project or, something which is very complicated. So this can help us to do your to-do, add your photos, do these snag lists, share it with the contractor, share it with the client. It's a daily app and it's a virtual clipboard, so all your day-to-day tasks that you need to do, you can just check them off the list and work. So these kind of things, Evernote for that example, that's a great example of very, very, if you want to work transparently with your client or contractor, Evernote works. So all these kind of things can help to optimize our work processes, much simplified, easier to deal with rather than just doing our typical sketches anymore. SketchUp also for that matter, I'm sure that's a great, great tool and we can really discuss that further. So that's one where we can model anything that's done so quick, so easy, and the design process can be helped so much more.
Zaru, would you like to take it?
Yeah, sure. So yes, of course, there's so many of these apps, like she rightly pointed out, like Evernote and Wanderlust and stuff like that. And there are even more. Another great one I came across was Wrike, WRIKE, which has currently been making a lot of headway in the creative space. And so one thing I noticed about, there are 100 tools out there, 100 project management tools out there, but following, basically getting your team to comply to these tools is a little bit of a struggle, because any change is a little bit of a struggle. And it's not as pinpointed towards interior or interior architecture as much as it is for project management and larger big scale projects and stuff like that. So I think the key is to look deeper into these tools and see which would adapt best towards the culture of the firm, where design members would be able to incorporate it easier and more simplicity into their current structure. So that I feel is the key in this game, is how simple can you make it for the design team to actually incorporate it? Because a lot of these tools are very complicated and have thousands of features, but sometimes that usually just confuses people, confuses the creative process, disrupts the creative process. So I think the key is also in finding the right tool for your organization as well.
But could we imagine working without these tools?
Not at all. Not at all. No.
Yes.
Well, it did happen at one point, but I don't think anymore. No chance.
Right. Shilpa?
Yeah, I totally agree with both Zarir and Jahan. So, first of all, this is a great discussion that we're having, considering, we've all been locked down for the last 3 months. And the only way we have all literally been connected with everybody that we're talking about, whether it's our fraternity, our friends, family, people around the world, listening to everybody, has only been through the virtual world. So I think, if we hadn't had any of these tools, whether it is for communication, design, connecting with people, we wouldn't be here, and, this wouldn't actually be possible. So I think it's really important to embrace, and I've seen people who've been, both opposed to technology or even technologically challenged, who actually changed in this entire period of 3 months, because they realized the importance of these smaller, finer things. And I think when it comes to designing, like, we graduated in a time and we went to school in a time where the focus was on hand sketching, a lot of sketching by design, and then technology was slowly introduced to us in the next decade. So we've sort of seen it through the entire gamut, where we started with, the hand, as well as, designing through these softwares, whether it's SketchUp, Photoshop, Lumion, Illustrator, and we're using all of these today. But I think even today, for us as a studio, it becomes very important to fuse the two. We do encourage everybody who joins us, and most of the people who work with us are, the younger lot. So they're already very advanced in their technological, levels. But what we also prefer is we actually see if they can think via hand and via sketching, and how they can then convert that digitally into, designs, visualizations through these tools. So I think a combination and a fusion of these two is really important, to sort of get the entire process going, whether it's design, construction, and, end-to-end results.
The person we're missing today in the panel is Shonali, and we are really missing her. She fell ill, food poisoning. I mean, I thought it was difficult to have food poisoning in the lockdown period, but I guess restaurants have opened and people are adventurous. I'm sure she was adventurous enough to go out, and suffering a bit for it. Well, we'll hope to get her on soon at one of our subsequent panels. I hope she's listening, and hope she takes care and gets well quickly.
Yeah.
For Zarir, in today's day and age, consumers find it important to visualize the space before making decisions. What are some of the digital aids that designers can use for this?
Thanks, Vivek. So there are a lot of aids, and actually I would not be the best person to answer this because we are a little bit more traditional on that side, where we don't use many tools to get to this point of visualization before construction. But I'll walk you through what we currently believe in. So again, being residential designers primarily, it's a very interactive or a very hands-on design process with the client, and it's up to the designer as well to lead the client in the right direction. The client has a certain aesthetic that they wish to achieve towards the end of it. It's up to the designer to lead the client into that direction, and so we don't. There's SketchUp, all sorts of tools with Photoshop. There's all sorts of referencing and mood boards and palettes, etc., that you can do to achieve this at this point in time. Then there's also newer tech that's coming out, being V-Ray or 360 photos and stitching and all of that. But what we feel is that the tech in this is a little is not as advanced yet for it to be efficient in terms of time. To do a digital walkthrough or to do a V-Ray viewing or something like that. I mean, a virtual viewing. You need to technically do a 3D of the entire home, stitch it all together, then do a render of it to be a walkthrough. So I don't think all of this is right there yet in terms of tech. So what we do is we do a lot of sketching. We build a lot of concepts on drawing in hand. We explain a lot of our concepts in detail to the client to the extent that they can understand. And we actually push them to trust us more than they trust, visual representations of what we could kind of portray or what we're thinking. Because again, it's, every designer is not trying to just have a bunch of references and, just depict the final end product through referencing. It's obviously way more developed than that. So what we do is we do elevations and sketches in hand. We do detailed 3D renders as once those concepts do develop using 3ds Max, Blender, tools like V-Ray and Corona to supplement 3ds Max. But the end goal is to try and limit that in certain cases, because the more you show, the more you can tend to confuse your client. The more references you throw at them, the more you are causing confusion. So at the end of the day, I feel it's the designer's direction that leads this. And some of the tools, sorry to go off topic, but some of the tools that we use and we don't quite do SketchUp and stuff for that is 3ds Max and just, physical mood boards, palettes, color palettes, etc.
But, I mean, to talk of lay people like me, we would be delighted if we could just get a 3D walkthrough so I can see my home. I can walk through from room to room, walk through into...
You'll have to wait 3 minutes for that walkthrough then. It's a very time-consuming process because you literally have to render each and every flat surface or elevation or ceiling or floor, and then you take that all of them, and you stitch them together to create a walkthrough. So
but there's no automated way.
It's getting there, but the way we would like to depict it is with a little bit more accuracy. You can do that right now, but accuracy is absolutely zero. You're seeing a very kacha 3D kind of blocking kind of walkthrough with not the level of detailing when I mean accuracy. So again, that would be painting the wrong picture for a client. You're not actually portraying what you're able to do. 3ds Max, in my opinion, is the best in terms of what you can actually pinpoint and accurately show that this is what it's going to look like. So you would like your walkthrough also to be some of that kind of level. And to do that, it's extremely time consuming at this point in time.
Jahara, first I have to say, I love the name. Jahara sounds such a nice name.
Thank you. That's so sweet. So whatever Zarir said, I kind of feel the mood boards and your swatches and what we show, your marble, the finishes, any kind of walkthrough, any kind of 3D is not going to let you have that touch and feel. So it's only going to be a very overall picture. So if you feel that, you're going to play with textures and spaces like that, that's not going to happen through any kind of environment like that. saying that we've now, at least in India, we've even got these VR platforms now, so virtual reality. So there's another software called Trezi where you can actually put your 3D max, your 3Ds into that, and you can take a completely virtual collaboration of all your whole movement there. So, you know, you could be, your client could be, you could be somewhere else. All of you are watching it through this kind of goggles, and you can walk through it completely, feel up, down, you know, you move your head. It's just complete virtual reality. So that is stepping on, but very fledgling stages yet. And I mean, I think a lot more experiments will be really required to get this going completely. I'm thinking it basically, you have to balance experimentation with your discipline. So if your sketches are good and you feel that that's confident enough to get through to your client, I think I say go with that. I mean, traditional can't go wrong. And if this is required, because do clients always want all these 3Ds and say, I can't visualize this space, what you're showing me on a flat elevation. Very simply, they can, you know, very often pick up the hands and say, I can't visualize what you've drawn. So
Yes.
this is to a certain extent to that. So I think we really need a lot more innovation for us to go quicker, but it's something that's here to stay.
Shilpa, are you the tech person for Samir is?
Samir is actually definitely more than me. In fact, he sat in this entire lockdown and he learned a couple of softwares. He did Rhino. We actually went and learned advanced Excel, and to see how we can sort of better our, office processes and stuff like that. So we did delve into a little bit of that. But just adding to what they said, and we've had clients who've actually come to us and said, we want to see this in a 10-second walkthrough, and we want to see this in VR. One is that right now, there are like a few platforms that are doing this in India. There are some international ones that have also come in. Obviously, the pricing is also high. So the moment, and we do see it becoming a norm actually in probably a few years. But the only thing is that, the cost that is going to add to a project, whether the client is going to pay it, the architect is going to absorb it, who is that person who's going to be doing it? There are developers and builders who are ready to do this right now because it is part of their marketing budget. So we've had developers who've come to us and said, we want to see this entire lobby in a walkthrough, or we want to sort of put these, create a space where we are going to actually give these VR glasses to these guys, and the client can actually come and touch and feel the entire home, because they don't want to spend, they kind of consider it as the money that they would have spent on the show flat, which would have been maybe 3 different show flats. So if they are able to sort of, put that into this augmented reality or the virtual reality kind of thing, there are people who are approaching these ideas right now. And I do see it, a lot more being used. For example, like Trezi that, Jahan mentioned, is actually, we've met them, we've spoken to them, and we've discussed some of the ideas too, where you can actually take up your SketchUp models and then, give it to them, and they'll, and it's, I don't think it only limits you to design and visualization, but it actually also gives you, if you've sort of done it correct, and if you've put enough time and information into it, because in the end, it's all garbage in, garbage out. So whatever you put in gets fed out. So if you've given them the right information, you can remove your quantities, your materials, your exact costing. That is actually eventually going to save the client a lot of time and money if it is done right and in the, the correct way and process. So I think there is a lot more that we have to figure out as to how it's going to be done, where we can use it in the best possible ways. But I do see that, in a decade or so, it might sort of become a norm for most large projects, if not small. It might not be required for a single residential project, but if I'm talking about, million square feet hospitals, schools, resorts, big master planning projects, then I think definitely it's the way to go.
But Shilpa, would you say builders have started using this as a substitute for show flats?
They have, so before, what happens is the show flat doesn't come until a certain point of time.
So the show flat is ready. It's like a precursor to a show flat. But
they need to start marketing their project before they even dig the ground. They almost start marketing a project like a year before that. So then they use these tools to do the entire process instead of just taking reference images. Because what's happened is you're not even allowed to use other reference images and say, you'll see a little note that says, this is not an actual thing, because by law, you're not really allowed to do that anymore. So they're actually starting to sort of go a little bit deeper, but you are looking at only the ones who are probably the ones that are going to invest in a, good marketing budget, and not every builder.
I once went to see an apartment that was done in Oberoi 360, a sample apartment done. It was done by Sunu Aibara, and it was so good. It was so good. I just wanted to stay there. It was so good. So, how do you substitute the real experience?
You don't.
Right.
What about the current way that y'all are using 3D renders and stuff? Would you say that's like if an efficient way of helping consumers visualize, in terms of how long does it take to make one? Because I've heard very conflicting things where people have said, it takes ages, it takes a lot of manpower, it's just not worth the time, things like that.
It's definitely worth the time. It does. I mean, it depends on how detailed you'd like to be, and it's definitely worth the time for sure. It's the best tool out there, I feel, in terms of a visualization. And I feel it's only a matter of time now that other technologies start building up to that level of quality, which you can achieve in a less amount of time. So that's what I meant by saying that it's only a matter of time that tech develops to the point where time is more efficiently used to get that same kind of end product. I don't know how the rest of you guys feel about that.
3D Max is, the V-Ray, the Maya, you take it into any kind of extreme level, how much you want to render it. If you do a softer version and, semi-blocks and all of that, that can go much faster. So you could have somebody in your office who's actually just focusing on that, and a full-time person who's just doing that. Because like I said, a lot of the clients can't visualize on flat. So if you just give them a regular plan and elevation, they're pretty much lost. So regular blocks and all those can go faster, but if you want very high quality resolution and all, of course you have to invest in the hardware, the software also. So, and the person who's trained enough and knowledgeable enough to use this efficiently. So going up to Maya and all is very time consuming. So the faster, simpler blocks can be churned out easier, but for doing it complicated, you'll need a lot more technology.
Yeah. So maybe what could be the most ideal situation is that even a designer sitting and designing, conceptualizing, working on 2D elevation, if the tech could reach that point of advancement that it doesn't necessarily need to be handed over to a 3D team, but there's a tool which can be easily incorporated into how current designers draw or draft, and we can start rendering. Each individual designer can be capable of producing their own 3D renders. You don't specifically need to have a visualization team for that. So maybe that could be, the way tech could move. That could be a new way of churning out 3Ds quicker. That could, so that is definitely something that could be really interesting to see.
Yeah, and I think a lot of your iPad Pro softwares and apps actually let you sketch and then convert those things into proper 3D visuals, which you could actually present. So you could take your hand sketches and sort of almost convert them into a digitized sketch, which is beautiful because it works as a great presentation tool, but you are able to sketch your ideas too. So I think there are a lot of ways that, you could sort of transition this. For us, we do a lot of SketchUp visualization in-house after the hand sketching bit, because it helps it helps us develop options. It helps us internally also develop a lot of ideas before we actually go out and present it even to the client. So, but I think when it comes to choosing whether you're going to go for a certain software, whether it's 3D Max or, professional renderings versus say maybe just a SketchUp model, I think it's very client dependent. We've had clients who say, they look at plans and they'll say, I don't understand a thing. Do not show me a plan. So, I mean, for those clients, we actually have to inform that we will be doing, we will outsource professional 3D views for you with actual material applications. And then those are the clients who actually literally match up your built work to the 3D. and say that you showed me this. It's got to look like that. So we've had those, that level. And then we've had ones who understand a little SketchUp model and can visualize it. And then you separately show them physical materials to go along with that model. So I think you have to sort of decide based on your initial understanding and the timeline of the project too. For example, we design a lot of restaurants which actually have only a 3-week entire design to construction documentation time. Literally in 4 weeks, you have to hit site. So I do not think that those kind of projects will give you enough time to do very detailed professional views.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm.
Okay, so moving on to the next question. This is for Jahan Ara. Are educational institutions focusing on digital design? In your opinion, what should be added to the curriculum to help students adapt better to the digital revolution?
I think more than the digital revolution, I mean, it was always there, but the lockdown has accelerated all this adoption of digital technology. I mean, at least in the design college education, this is an ideal time to experiment and deploy new tools to make education delivery meaningful. The students can't go to the campuses, so it's a chance to be more efficient and productive. So you can develop new, improved professional skills through online learning, assessment also. Tests. You can have your MCQ, so many kinds of different tests. But technology in education, I feel that we're moving from basically a teacher-centric education to a student-centric. So you have to focus on how you're going to do that. We've been going into online conferencing now, meeting tools. So instead of having your PTA and parent-teacher meetings and all of that, we can do all of that online. So our famous Zoom can sort out all these issues for us. Microsoft Team, those ones, so parent-teacher meetings, staff management meetings. You're going to save so much time and cost, just using these kind of collaborative tools. We've got one of our teachers also said, last semester with wrapping up and all that earlier you had a difference between backbenchers and the front benchers. So while you're teaching, you tend to concentrate on the ones who are paying attention to you right in the front. But now there's no difference between the backbenchers and the front benchers, right? So everybody's an equal platform, and you're seeing all of them. So there's no difference between the girls and the boys or anything of that sort. So these kind of technology that we're using now, these digital platforms, really help to, I think, fill in all the gaps that we were missing on earlier. So even faculty selection that we've been doing now for our upcoming year for CIST and the IIS courses and all of that. We're using all of this. There has been no other method. We can't reach anybody to interview anybody, to see anybody. Admissions are happening online. So if it weren't for this huge step up to meet people like students who want to apply from, say, anywhere in the north and want to come into Bombay, they don't have to travel for this. We're talking to them online. We're talking to them this. And this COVID, this whole lockdown has forced us to take this step, which wouldn't have happened earlier. Virtual classrooms have always been there, like Udemy and these kind of platforms where you can download and learn at your own convenience. Instructors can teach anyone. They've been there and they are here to stay. I think that's going to be a long thing. There's going to be a lot of investment in that, and I think that's something that's going to be a large takeaway from this. That online is here to stay.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's amazing how small the world has become. I think, when we went to college or even much later, to hear a lecture from one of these prominent architects was like once in a lifetime, when somebody said that, oh, so-and-so architect, even if it is from India or around the world, had, say, come and given us a lecture, it was one of those things you sort of remembered. But I think it's brilliant how the students today have access to listening to all the people that they're studying about, whether it's, I can watch somebody like Peter Eisenman or Renzo Piano give a talk and be as personal as he can be sitting in his house and, doing that. I think it's something else.
Sorry to interrupt. How does the faculty go about, so there's always new softwares developing, really comprehensive and good software out there. How do faculties decide or, pick and choose amongst which should be the ones that can be opted to students to learn, to try a hand at? How does the software side work on the faculty front?
Teaching wise, or you mean as in, because it's either Zoom mostly people are using to teach, or they're using this MS Teams?
Softwares like Revit and CAD and, you know,
Yeah, we're doing those. Yeah, and doing these short-term courses, and it's, you know, you restrict your batch size. That's one-on-one, because, you know, everybody's practicing while they're doing that. It's not impossible to teach. In fact, we've had very successful workshops just now, modules 5-6 days once, and they've worked fantastically to, you know, give you the fund. Everybody's on the thing. As long as you have your own software, they can teach there. Restrict your batch. The teacher, you know, it becomes quite interactive, and you see the screen. Screen sharing is so easy, so you immediately make out your errors and stuff like that. So software training also, in fact, that's very much part of the online thing that's taking over. So everybody's doing these software trainings from Twinmotion, these new softwares, which, I mean, I had no idea. I have no idea how to use them. All of that. Photoshop. I did a course in Photoshop myself. So everybody within the office was doing that. So these short-term courses can be done very easily online.
Question is to Shilpa. Digital technology in manufacturing has led to better products and designs. Has it also made it easier for designers to select these products and to integrate these products into their designs?
I think the entire, like, I think most of the previous discussion that we were talking about was more design and presentation tools, right? I think there is an entire gamut of technology that will be very, very beneficial in the future for construction itself. Like, basically, you know, if you are going to use, if I'm talking about low-cost housing, or if I'm talking about, you know, large hospitals or any such sort of places which need to be built faster, accurate, with minimal material, minimal wastage, I think the technology would be the way to go, selection of materials. Because what will happen is, if you incorporate these technologies right from the beginning, for example, there are these companies like Dirt, I think a bunch of others who are already doing it, where you take your designs, you actually give it to, put it into these softwares with whatever customized materials you want. They will actually calculate entire BOQs, materials, costing, everything for you, which means you're going to waste much lesser material while ordering. You're making the selections as per, like, you know, whatever your physical selections might be. We're actually calculating those early on. The biggest challenge here is the changes, you know, like, you need to be sure of your design at a certain point. You have to stop saying design, and then you need to go into that manufacturing mode and say that this is, you know, from now on, this is going to be like your entire production time. And that's when you'll actually be able to use the technology really well, because construction time and design time will start overlapping, and you will, something that goes on for say 4 or 5 years will actually get cut down to maybe 1.5, 2 years. I'd actually worked on a hospital as a consultant in Varanasi, which got done in less than 9, I think 8 months. And it was over like a 10 lakh square feet hospital, but because the entire, and in a certain budget. So the whole idea was to use technology, even for the supervision, you know, drones doing the sort of reducing the manual labor. So I think it is going to be there. It's already being done around the world in a lot of places, but India will take some time to sort of get there for, because we are so into that, you know, keep designing till the end mode, or the client coming and changing stuff sort of till the end. You know, we say your hospitals get designed for 6 months, but then the entire doctor team changes, and then you kind of have an, you know, you go back, which then doesn't work for the system, because you already, sorry, but it's gone for printing and production. So, you know.
Yeah.
Really?
No, exactly what she said, of course, completely agree. And I mean, for us, interior designers, and she's doing work on all sorts of scales in terms of commercial and production. But for interior designers, when we're mainly working with, you know, say, for example, customized furniture, lighting, stonework, inlay, etc., with any specialized vendor who has the capability of doing any sort of tech pre-dev work, I mean, it's the same discussion that we were discussing earlier about visualizations. Now, even production teams have the option of, you know, just like we are to the client, they are to us in terms of running by their pre-construction products by us, making sure that the design is absolutely as per spec. Gone are the days are, samples, mock-ups, khoka, ye wo, all of that can now be put to rest if I'm talking about accessories and maybe, hardware and lights and stuff like that. Obviously the stuff like furniture and all is still a different matter in terms of custom design and how that could go digital and replace ergonomics. I don't know how that would flare out, but definitely in terms of the smaller items that maybe designers may want to custom design, develop themselves and stuff like that. Again, same tools are apt for them, just like the way they are for us, for our clients.
Because you mentioned furniture, so I'm specifically going to say something like Pepperfry. You don't think consumers are like able to order furniture online without kind of having the touch and feel aspect of it?
Well, that it is possible and it is done very often, even. But we prefer the touch and feel, especially if you're spending that kind of money.
So that's what I was going to say. So the luxury segment is maybe not able to order online without touch and feel.
I think touch and feel is part of the end service and experience of the whole process as well. So I don't think that can be replaced with tech so far.
Zarir, I went to Milan to buy furniture. I'd gone some 20 years back with Mum. And we roamed around, had a great time, enjoyed ourselves, drank wine, ate good food. And we were able to select. We came back, everything was over. This time when I went, 20 years later, my God, it's... can't do it. We couldn't do it. There was no way that we could do it. So and you know what we had done the first time? You won't believe it. We carried with us a Polaroid camera because there were no cameras. We carried with us a Polaroid camera, whatever we liked, quickly took a Polaroid film, wrote behind it the name, all that name, price, etc. And then sat at the hotel, tired at the end of the day and did everything. But this time we went there and I said, never again, don't need it. I came back, got a giant TV screen at home. So somebody came with the laptop, just took us through high resolution images. They gave us swatches of upholstery, this, that, the other. We said, I never need to go anywhere. I just want to do it like this. How can we possibly do it there? It's mind-boggling there, mind-boggling.
So definitely during the fair, we wouldn't recommend anyone to go. Even designers now don't like going. It's just a mela. But yes, we do that a lot with clients where, we actually urge clients not to go during the fair. And what we do is, in fact, say for example, if we shortlisted amongst 8 or 10 brands, we tend to go after the fair or before the fair to the warehouse, to the factory if the client is keen to see. And we organize it based on what we've pre-selected now, things that have, so at least they get an idea of the difference between what they're getting locally, what they're getting in Italy, what they're getting in China, if they want. Otherwise, for very many projects, we just do, like you said, swatches, finishes, high-res images, then 3D views of those exact blocks in their 3D renders. And that way also it can be done. You're right.
If you use technology just for the sake of it, I think it's irrelevant. It doesn't help. But if you use it correctly and how you need to put it into where you're going to use it, it can be really helpful. I mean, these global sourcing platforms, you've got so many of them and they're pretty useful. You select your product the same way they'll come to you. They have the whole range of, you don't just zero down on one vendor. You can choose your dining table from X and your dining chairs from Y and bring the whole thing together. They bring you the swatches, they bring you the veneer finishes, the wood textures. You can feel all of that sitting in your living room in your own office, and the whole thing shipped to you finally in a complete set on that. So if you use it correctly, I think it's a wonderful, wonderful era that's out there for us. This technology, even in products like now, like Brohe has these, and Kohler has all of these sanitary fittings that, especially now that about the pandemic and all, you walk in and the seat cover lifts up and you've got odorless bathrooms and toilets and stuff like that. So they've all taken technology into a different product design level, which is going to take things much further ahead for us. I think one of them is even coming up with noiseless showers. So those are earth-shattering, I feel, on this, but used correctly. I mean, if you use it randomly, it's not going to work for anyone.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think in terms of products, there is a lot that could be done, but I think you also have to understand the connect with human behavior and how the human response will be to it. So I think that connection of human to technology is again very important, and so a lot of like people who are actually delving with technology are doing a lot of background research with the human behavior. In fact, this entire robotic thing that's coming out right now, people, even for that matter, like Siri or, the Amazon Talk. I mean, there's this whole thing of how to make it more human now. It's so that you can actually connect versus just being a voice that will do a job for you, I think everybody is looking at that connection too, because otherwise the technology will sort of not do its job.
If this continues, I mean, if the lockdown continues, if the virus does not abate, I hope it's going to abate. I can see, in fact, we had a call with the Oxford University lab that is developing a vaccine, and they're not able to find enough patients there because they're saying that the virus is disappearing. So they may not even be able to come up with a vaccine because there are not enough people who have COVID anymore. So with that's good news from that point of view. So, but if this continues and becomes the new normal, what are the various digital tools that you would need to keep the business running? Zarir, you take that?
So I think we touched upon a lot of this in the first question, but just coming back to that, again, the main crux of this discussion is that the entire design process that was earlier in an office now needs to change and become work from home. And by process, I mean collaboration, right? Design is all about collaboration. It's all about throwing ideas, working together as a team, sitting 3 people together and critiquing each other's design. That entire whole concept of collaboration now needs to move onto a digital platform is a little challenging. I thought would be way more challenging, but so far we've been operating it like that, and it's been pretty good. Not many complaints. I think what's critical, so that's on the design side, that every studio needs to establish a certain SOP as to how they were functioning and now how to take that same functioning into a work from home, where teams either get on a call every morning and just catch up, or on a virtual call, or share ideas digitally, even though if it's not for a specific project, you can create meeting times for that, for critiquing, for collaborating. I think a lot of that gets forgotten now that we all work from home and we're all working out of individual silos. I think that is a big point that everyone should address with their internal teams, or with outside teams as well. Collaboration is always key in design. And for tools, yes, there's so many. There's Microsoft Teams, there's Zoom, there's Google Hangouts. There's many that you can use, whatever suits your domain or whatever you have added. Supplemental softwares that you can load onto that as well. There's the Office, Microsoft Office tool, and there's a Google tool which has all sorts of different OneDrive or Google G Drive and all linked to it, so you can do file sharing, etc. So that's more on the creative side. And of course, on the business side, I would feel just your standard SOPs need to continue to follow. Timesheets need to be filled in. Your same HR, your attendance, your work from home kind of policy in terms of getting the same level of, not same, maybe 80 to 90% productivity that you can at offices, same at work from home. So I think it's a matter of time that everyone just grows comfortable in adapting to a new process. And I think everything should get back to normal in no time. At least we are certainly seeing a good response. And so I'm sure others are seeing it too.
I just feel that we shouldn't overdo this whole thing. And I was mentioning about the Zoom gloom. I just feel that, prolonged exposure to how many Zoom calls a day and how many of all being online continuously and not being able to see and not being able to interact with the other thing. You can't even see if somebody is literally on the other side, or your last person on the screen has moved out. You don't know, you may be talking and there's just a complete lack of this. So I feel there's an interpersonal relationship that would have been far more effective, of course, if you were, face to face. And that's being this, and how long we're going to be able to sustain like this, completely having this whole on conversation, not being able to actually physically see the rest of you. It's just whatever my hand motions here, you're going to just, I'm going to convey my entire idea with just, an upper body here. I think that's going to take an exhaustion. I mean, people are going to get exhausted of this also at a certain point.
I sort of agree that I think eventually we are social animals, and given a choice, you would love to work from home for say 2 days a week or 3 days a week, but you do need that one day to sort of get out, meet your colleagues, talk to people, check in. I think checking in becomes so important. You realize this after going online that checking in with each person, your colleagues, your employees, your fraternity, just talking to people, it's become so important to sort of do that, to understand that your physical, mental health is actually good, because you don't realize in this entire online situation, I mean, so many times people are online with their video off and, maybe there's a voice, but you don't really know how things may actually be. So I think that till the time we are able to get back to normal, a lot of unlimited data, internet data, and checking in will become really important.
Yeah.
But how are you managing site work during the lockdown? And that this is a question. And because you need to approve the finishing of what the contractor has done, how does that happen?
That has to happen on site, I feel. I mean, there's no other way of getting around that right now. I mean, teams can build processes where, I mean, it's a fast stretch, but child can be given digitally and virtually and all. I don't think that's a possibility. So that still does have to happen, but at least you're not, I feel that if this lockdown continues, infection rates are bad, you don't want to risk team members taking public transport or, just generally just being out when not essentially required to be out, then at least you can limit this by only doing one-off urgent site visits. And this has to be done. There's no other way to go about this, I feel.
Yeah.
And would you look at buying more prefabricated, pre-finished, factory finished, ready to use materials like they have abroad? I was in LA when Rohan's restaurant was coming up, and there were and I went to site with him, the work was going on. There were about 4 or 5 people in the whole restaurant, about 8,000 square feet, 9,000 square feet restaurant, very high-end interior designer of LA. But I asked Rohan, where are the people? 5 people, 5 people. It looked like they're all gone for lunch or tea or something. It was closed. It was a closed kind of thing. He said, no, but these are the people that work every day. I said, but how will they finish in 2 months' time? If it was in India, there'd be 200-300 people over here. 200-300. And there were 5 people. Just putting up a wall, putting up partitions, putting up a ceiling, and it was just happening. And that could only happen because a lot of the stuff was pre-finished. It just got fitted.
Yeah.
The lines, whether it was MEP or whether it was anything, it was all just came and got plugged in.
I think we've actually done this pre-lockdown too for a bunch of our residential interior projects, the last few ones. And I'm talking about customized furniture, customized high-end design also, but everything has actually been made outside the site and pretty much brought in and fitted in. Like wardrobes are done in the factory with whatever finishes you want. Obviously the flooring and civil work had to be done on site, but pretty much that was the only thing that was done on site. Everything else was actually done outside because, the sites these days had a lot of restrictions in terms of their timing, their, the number of times you can use the lift, the working hours, very strict with the labor. So it actually worked out better in terms of time, and we could finish sites much faster. And the only time, the last 2 weeks was, when you would see people back to back fitting in things on the site. And otherwise, literally 4 months, the site was empty because everything was happening outside.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so convenient with kitchens and wardrobes now. kitchen gets fitted, wardrobe gets fitted, having to making at site and all, for months together is a thing of the past, I think, isn't it? Even though maybe the quality of those teak wood, cut at site, fitted, may be better, maybe longer lasting, but I mean, do we have now the time and inclination to wait for all that? I don't know how you guys, Jara, what is your
I definitely think you have to make things off-site now. This whole day of the carpenter doing gisi and sitting there for, literally 6 and 8 months, only the carpentry teams would be at site. That's a way of the past. We have to go ahead. We have to do that. And we can do factory control. We can make sure that, the right materials being used behind on the whole thing, and so much customization. So the idea that, if you go to a factory and you will get only what's the standard range, that doesn't exist now. You can do so much customization. And there are furniture vendors who will do that customization for you to a finish that you'd be shocked. Even India, I mean, the Go Vocal for Local, I think, is a fantastic initiative, because the kind of infrastructure that we've had, and our traditional guys are now going into the factory, what products that we can produce here is something to behold. And let the whole world watch out. I think we're going to come up with some fantastic ranges over here locally, and that's the way. Let them produce it in the factory, let them produce all of that, bring it to site, installation done, and you're out. Civil work, of course, like Shilpa mentioned, you have to do. There's just no option right there. But even that can go faster. Instead of doing the typical flooring layout, lay it with grout. You don't do your cement pani and all of that work. Just use your chemicals, use materials that have been there around for years, but we always felt that that's a kind of cost incurrence, since you'll put up your project by so much if you use those materials. But if you really factor that in, and time is money, I think these materials can really change the time factor that you can deliver your project.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was the Purana Zamana where drawing and designing was pretty much done on site, and nothing was done in the studio before site work was to start. So that's why carpenters had to sit on site and prefabricate right there and then. But nowadays, every design studio is doing all sorts of levels of detailed design pre-site work. So you have all the documentation, you have all the information ready, which you can hand over. And that production can be happening while the fixed civil MEP work is happening on site, and ready to be fitted as soon as, you've started your base civil stuff. So I think that's definitely the way it's happening now. And it has to be, we have to kick off the contractors from doing production or prefabrication work on site.
We've done hotels in Africa. The whole factory produced the entire room sets in India. The hotel was there in Zanzibar. It was produced here, shipped there down to the nail of hanging details we put into the drawings. It was so easy to install it overnight. Literally, it was done there. So I think boundaries now can be looked at as something of the past, and it can be made somewhere, brought somewhere else, and save a lot of the client's time and money both.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's true. In fact, it's also like greener, less polluting, less dust. You're also putting a full stop to changes in design, I feel, because that's it. This is it. We've sent it for production now. And so, you're on to the next stage. So I think, a lot of these things are making better processes.
I have a question from Zubin the Master. He's driving, so he's not able to, but he's watching, but he's not able to ask there. So he sent me the question. Don't you feel that keeping hand sketching alive is important? Won't our employees become too dependent on tech? What happens if they're needed to put up a hand sketch to explain themselves at a site or in a client meeting? Who will take that?
I think, like I already mentioned, we actually do a little interview test for any employee, which is only hand sketching. We do not do any tech test, because we already know they're good at tech. So we actually make them only hand sketch concepts in our interview to actually understand. And they don't have to be really good sketches, but they have to be able to put down their thoughts in the form of sketches, whether it is, scaled elevations or plans or little views. And I think whenever a design project comes into the office, we actually just do a little sketching charrette with everybody in the office, just take 2 hours and just sketch out everything. And nobody touches the computer, no reference images, nothing.
Is Zubin referring specifically to COVID and not being around each other and that kind of sketching? Is that what he's referring to?
No, because we're talking of digitalization, tools, and use of technology and use of things. So he's saying, listen, we need some back to basic stuff also.
Basics
skills available.
I would believe that every designer always thinks in the basic of sketching, and that's how it's.
He just said it's not related to COVID. He just put a comment there.
Okay. So then, yes, I completely agree with you.
A lot of our guys at sites still, however detailed our drawings in local sites, the guy can't read, right? So if your designer and your team member can't sketch, he's never going to get that point across to the team guy at the site. So you have to have some basic sketching, and that's why you see a lot of the walls still filled with a lot of the sketches of kiska nosing detail and iska molding detail kaise hua. So that's sketched on the wall because you can't get that point across to the team. So you have to have sketching inherently within you.
In fact, I just want to add to this that, a lot of the times now, because, we are talking about the positives of technology, but I feel like sometimes when you see portfolios from college, you also realize that, the compositions or the digital aspect is really good, but the design didn't go ahead, or it didn't get resolved, or it didn't. So a lot of that is also happening where the focus sort of has shifted to presentation and, the composition and the making of the portfolio versus the actual product or the design concept itself. So I think that is definitely important, and goes back to what Zubin is saying that, we need to know that balance too.
Shilpa, do you want to bring in Samir into the room with you so that we can get a bit of view? Because he's the tech guy, we need to hear from him as well. Call him in.
I'll ask him if he wants to join in.
Call him.
Hi guys.
Hi Samir. Hi. Welcome.
Hi, Samir.
Can we hear something from you? Because you're the tech guy.
The hand guy and the tech guy.
Pretty much all over the place. I'm on the site. I'm on, tech. Yeah, pretty much. But I think, like Shilpa said, I think we still believe a lot in, call it old school, but I think drawing by hand and sketching, I think always, you get that first thing out. And we always, when I used to teach, I still teach at LS School of Raja, and when we go there, I always encourage students to start sketching, because then you can actually articulate a little. It's little traditional, but I think it still works. It's still a good medium to do that.
Great. So I think we've last couple of questions. We have something that Anika has, I think, from the audience.
We have a couple of questions from the audience. One of the questions is from Miloni Sampath, where she's asking you all what tools you all use for SketchUp. Any advice on what tools you can use for SketchUp? Google SketchUp, or that's her question.
Yeah, Google SketchUp. I think that's the major one that's out there. That's all. Most of everybody's using that. I don't know if there's anything else and faster.
Yeah, and
SketchUp is a great way to start articulating, and then you have so many methods of taking it to rendering, like V-Ray and Lumion and slow wind motion, and there are so many more right now. It's amazing. So I think you can really express designs in a much faster and better way.
Another question is, can we outsource 3D rendering, or is it important to do it in-house?
So it can definitely be outsourced, and a lot of times it is outsourced, but there's a lot of back and forth and coordination I feel that you do need with your 3D team to convey the exact design, exact material palette, exact texture. And also very often the designer likes to play and change and move about and, experiment with the 3D itself. So yes, it's possible, but I feel that it just requires one extra step of coordination. So just be prepared for that.
We have a question from Gayatri Garg. During times like these where everyone's working from home, how effective is it to take up an internship? Because nothing can compare to actually going to an office and gaining experience. But at the end of the day, learning is still happening. So what are your views on this?
Good question.
I think you should go for it. I mean, we've actually hired 2 interns during this time, and of course, we can't give them the physical, the site visit and the physical aspect. But I think there is still a lot of learning. It's been almost a month, and it's been great. I think they're understanding a lot of the processes, and in fact, they're getting a chance to connect on so many knowledgeable sessions right now. We're doing different sessions with knowledge vendors or materials and stuff like that, and I think that's great for interns to sort of pick up while they're anyways at home.
It's very important to understand when you're working in college, or when you're doing projects in college, you're working with a same age group, and it's almost all of them are your friends. You need to work with different people of different age groups and also get the critique from different people. And at this point of time, it really works because you have so many platforms where we set up online meets, whether it is Zoom or Google Meet or Microsoft Teams. You meet, you discuss, we put it up forward, and everyone gets a chance to critique the design or talk about it.
And best part is you can surpass cities. I mean, you can sit in your house. I mean, we have somebody from Orissa working for us in Bombay, so you don't have to worry about, you can do an internship wherever you like.
Okay, so we'll take one last question from the audience. This is from Ekta Parekh. I think it's important to also acknowledge that there is a difference in using a digital platform for presentations as against using it as a tool to aid design. Certain program softwares like Maya, Rhino, Grasshopper can actually be used as design tools to prompt you to think beyond the traditional workings on one's mind. Your views?
I still design traditionally. So I still sketch and still think of it. And so I don't really use any of these things more than digital presentation formats. So it's still, maybe I'm still old. I'm still the older one here. But I think a lot of it, maybe the newer generation, the Gen Z at least, might be able to visualize better and design angles better from, actually being on a platform like that. But I think traditionally design is better to understand. If you're sketching it yourself, you're putting in all the changes yourself and going onto a digital platform.
Design softwares like Rhino and Rhino and Grasshopper have made it, these tools have made it very efficient for production or visualizing something. I mean, even if we design it by hand or when you design it by a single sketch, you take it into this software where it can optimize the production or the execution of it by, you have 3D software or 3D modeling tools, or getting a prototype made, or for that matter, to get it into execution. So there is a translation, but I think the entire gap, you need to go through the whole process, right from the hand sketch to the
also, if your design is, the concept itself is, say, parametric design or parametric architecture, then I think these softwares are really helpful.
I think there's one more question from Mamta Ojahara.
Mamta asks, my question is to Ms. Poonawala. Being in academics, how do you expect students to get training to become industry ready?
So I think internship is part of your college curriculum. It's essential to do. So anything that you're doing while you're in college, also training on the thing more that you go on, field, firm, that's the best experience you can get. I mean, there's only so much that academics can teach you, and we will make, or colleges can make you industry ready to a certain extent, but without actually being on the field, I think you'll lose out if you just want to start off on your own and don't have any experience under your belt. I hope that answers that.
Okay, guys, that was the last question. That was extremely informative, very interesting, and I guess all of us really enjoyed it. And I'm sure the audience has also really enjoyed it. We have thousands of people who will be watching this over the next few days, and we even start getting questions later on, which we will pass on to you all to reply to. Thank you so much for coming on, and it was a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you for
Thanks,
having
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you, Anika.
Thank you for coming, guys. Thanks a lot. It was really interesting.
Thanks. This
Thanks.
was fun.
Guys, ciao.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.